So, in our last class, the last time we met, we talked about a new equation, or a new equilibrium. What was that? What was it called and what was the equation? Two parts here.
It was the Hardy-Equilibrium.
Okay, well that's part of it. Hardy, and there's another name. Anthony?
The I-Hardy-Weinberg.
Perfect, yeah. I'm just going to label EQ right now. It could be equation, equilibrium, principle. You might call it that too. I'm not particularly picky about that name. But that is the name. The Hardy-Weinberg equation, equilibrium, and so forth. What was, or what is that equation? Abacus.
T to the second plus 2pq plus q to the second equals 1.
Alright. So we have p squared, or p to the second, plus 2 pq plus q squared equals 1. What does that mean? It's nice that we have an equation that we can use, but it's useless if we don't know the concepts behind it. So what does it mean? Just take a stab. Don't be afraid to be wrong. You had an assignment. You had some practice with it, so you must have some idea. Yes.
Is it for frequency?
Okay, so frequency is a part of it. Definitely an aspect of it. What do we mean frequency as in like sound or light, or are we talking about a different kind of frequency? A different kind, right? Yeah. So we're talking about how often something occurs. What is this something?
That is the frequency, of a, trying to say, a mathematical frequency.
Okay, but what are we applying this to in biology?
Alleles.
Yes. So we're talking about genetics, specifically alleles, or forms of a gene. So we're talking about how often do these forms of a gene come up in some population that we examine. In the simplest form, we might say that we have two alleles, two forms of a gene. We can designate one as P, and the other is Q. And since we have P squared and Q squared, that means we would have two of the same allele in both those cases. So this one might be dominant, this one might be recessive, or vice versa. However you assign them, doesn't matter to me. It only matters that you're consistent with it in your work. Our middle option here is our hybrid, or our heterozygous case. We have one of each form put together. So we're not homozygous, dominant, recessive, we're heterozygous. That's what this middle term is here. Now I want to point out something that I don't think I stressed well enough in the last class. And that's the equilibrium aspect of this equation. What part of this never changes?
1.
The 1, right. Okay, so all of this added together always has to equal 1. So let's say I increase my p-value. What does my q have to do in response?
It has to increase as well.
Increase? If I increase both of these, is it going to equal 1 still?
Yes.
Decrease, right. So whatever I do to one, I have to do the opposite to the other one, because it always has to equal 1. You're always talking about 100% of the total possibilities. So this is a little bit of a math lesson here. If you have some equation that is always equal to a constant. So in this case, 1 is a constant because it's constantly the same, it's not changing. Whatever change happens in one of the variables, the other one has to respond in the opposite way. Let's just assign random numbers here right now. Let's say that P is equal to 2. We'll say that Q, I guess I shouldn't say 2 here. That's if we were going for 100%. I should say 0.02. We'll say Q is equal to, someone just give me a number. I'm just proving a point here that it doesn't matter. What's that? 5? So 0.05? Alright, so let's not assign a Q value right now. Let's not assign a Q value. Let's roll with P right now as 0.02. So does anybody remember that example that we did in class? It was kind of tough, I guess, in a way. What we started with? Yeah.
Blue eyes equal to like 9%.
Okay, alright, so we said that blue eyes were recessive, and it was 9% of our sample population had blue eyes. Well, since it was recessive, that means that both alleles were the same. So what did we write then? How did we start that problem out? Didn't we say that P squared
equals 0.09.
Right. So we said that P squared then was 9%. And again, just so we're aware, this is from our example in our last class. And converting that into a decimal version, we get 0.09. So that was our P squared value. I'm just going to tweak this now because we're using a new value here. So if this is 0.02 for, oh wait, that's just P. Let's say, this will be our last step here. Let's set this up. P is 0.02. How did we isolate P in our example in class last time? How did we get P by itself? We had P squared, how did we solve for P?
Take the square root.
We took the square root,
So
right?
we have to take that to the second?
Right, yeah. So if we want to use P squared, we need 0.02 squared. And what is 0.02 squared? Anybody have a calculator? I want something to do it just so you get the practice. Yes?
0.00. Wait, did I say 3 zeros already?
You meant 3 zeros, right?
0.04.
We have 0.00004 is our squared value there. So what would that be in percent? Just so we can relate it to our example that we did in class. How do we convert from a decimal to a percent? Multiply by 100. Wonderful, yeah. So when we multiply by 100, we're just moving the decimal place 2 slots to the right. So we'll get 0.04%. So this must be a fairly rare version of the gene if we're looking at a population and less than 1% has this recessive trait, this P squared recessive trait. So very, very rare trait indeed. Alright, so again, recalling back to our example that we did in class last time. We now have our P squared value given a known P. What should we do next?